Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about a topic that I bring up pretty regularly, but it's one that needs to be brought up because it's nonsense and it's very pervasive nonsense, and that is this idea that time under tension is somehow a factor in muscle growth, and the reality is it isn't actually a direct factor. That's what all the research shows. It's nonsense. And here's the issue with that. You'll get people who say, but this coach or that coach says it's really, really important, and their lifters use it. It's like, their lifters don't use time under tension. Okay, and because they're claiming it's a factor doesn't mean that it is. In other words, when someone says, well, but they got great results, or their lifters got great results doing it, have you considered that maybe their lifters and them got great results because they trained really hard and they're on anabolic drugs? I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's because they trained really hard and they're on anabolic drugs. You know what? That combination, combined with enough food, tends to get people pretty jacked. Okay? And I challenge anyone to disagree with that assertion. I think people who train really hard, and they put anabolic substances into their body and eat a lot of food and protein, I think they get jacked. And because they have some other ritual involved is not a factor. In other words, because I'll jump into why it doesn't matter the time under tension, but it's like if someone says, and the problem is people would believe them. If some top bodybuilding coach and champion started saying that my key to getting really strong is right before every set, I jump 3 times on my left foot and say ziggy zaggy, oi, oi, oi. And then I jump on the right foot twice. That's my magic secret. And then they win the Mr. Olympia, people would do it. And then if 20 other champions started doing the same thing and all swore by it, it would then become mainstream, and then all these other coaches would say that's actually the secret. And people would believe it, and I would have to make videos explaining to people why jumping 3 times on your left foot and saying ziggy zaggy, oi, 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 and then jumping twice on the right foot doesn't actually directly affect muscle growth. We would have to make videos explaining that. And now people say, oh, that's common sense. Oh, that's just common sense. You wouldn't have to. I think that we would, because it should be common sense based upon the science that the time under tension is irrelevant. Right? It should be common sense to anyone who's read studies on muscle growth and these things. It should be, but it clearly isn't, because enough people have made it sound reasonable. And the same coaches would do the same thing with the other thing I described. They would make it sound perfectly reasonable. They would give you a rational explanation. All right, but here's why time under tension doesn't matter. Number one, we find that the continual tension part doesn't really seem to matter for muscle growth. Muscles don't care. They care about total fatigue. They care about total tension. That's what they care about. They care about, did you exhaust the upper threshold fibers? And we know that those are a bigger and bigger factor the more advanced you get, because all the other intermediate fibers start reaching their growth potentials up the chain the longer you've been training. Okay? That's what we care about. And those things reach fatigue whether there's continual tension or not. In other words, even if you take a half second between reps, you'll still reach fatigue when you reach fatigue. When you've exhausted everything, it's still going to occur. All right. Number 2, if time under tension was a factor, then eccentric speed would matter, and it doesn't. And we've known this for 20 years. Studies that look at the speed of the eccentric rep, the lowering, have found that any eccentric that's controlled, anywhere between 1 and 4 seconds produces the same growth. So in other words, when studies have looked at it, there's no difference on a set of if you lower the weight and it takes 1 second versus 3. Even for all 10 reps, they produce the same muscle growth in the lab. But if we did 10 reps that way, that's 20 seconds longer tension. It doesn't seem to help. Furthermore, when eccentrics exceed about 4 seconds, they seem to cause less muscle growth. Okay, when they get less than a second, it seems to cause less muscle growth, and when they exceed 4 seconds. So here's a big problem right there with the time under tension. That doesn't work. Now, could we make a case on rate coding and stuff for not going as explosive as possible on concentrics for hypertrophy? Yes, but if we run a controlled eccentric, it seems to offset that. And I do want to be clear, that's a little more nuanced on the concentric. It does seem to build better power, but there is some data suggesting that, not doing explosive as possible of reps on the concentric might give more hypertrophy. And I know that's in conflict with other stuff I've said. It is because it's really nuanced, and there's a lot of conflicting data in that area regarding the way it reaches mechanical tension at the fiber level. Because here's what it comes down to. That is what causes muscle growth. It is mechanical tension, and that's where people say, oh, no, it's not volume, it is mechanical tension. But what you have to keep in mind is that we're talking tension on the individual muscle fiber. That is what matters. Okay, and that's not always achieved by lifting the heaviest weight possible, okay? Because that spreads them out more. As we do reps, like if you do a set of fatiguing reps, 5, 8, 12, whatever it happens to be, and you start reaching fatigue, it's because certain muscle fibers have gotten their mechanical tension. They're not able to recover. They drop out, and other ones have to come in. So yes, over the course of a challenging set of multiple reps, usually 5+, as we get deeper into the set, mechanical tension increases on different muscle fibers. Okay, now also ideally we want to take them into the ranges of motion that create the most tension. Right, which most of that happens at the lengthened position, not exclusively. Again, a little more nuanced. But here's the thing. The tension time, again, especially where they're just trying to do really super slow reps, it doesn't seem to do anything. There's no additional benefit to that. It's creating fatigue. All right, that really is what it comes down to. Are you creating fatigue, enough fatigue that the mechanical tension gets spread over a larger number of muscle fibers? So when we say mechanical tension, there's a volume component. Because yes, you need that tension to reach the highest number of muscle fibers possible, particularly the ones with the most growth potential. But it is that tension, okay, that creates it. Now people say, but see, that proves time under tension. No, because the time under tension is where they're trying to get you to make sets longer. They don't have to be longer to achieve that. They just have to be hard. So here's the thing. It doesn't matter if your eccentrics are 1 rep, 1 second, or 3 seconds. Are they there? Are they controlled at all? Doesn't matter how long your set is. What matters is, was enough mechanical tension reached? In other words, even if you do 1 second eccentric reps and you only do 6 reps on an exercise, but that 6th rep is really, really freaking hard, that can produce maximum muscle growth on a set per set basis, just like doing with a lighter weight 3 seconds on the way down controlled for 15 reps and then hitting, fatigue to where you really can't do a 16th rep, or the 15th rep moves super slow and it's grindy. The exact same response is achieved, almost identical, at the level of the upper threshold muscle fibers. Okay, that is where we get muscle growth.